Hello and welcome to the Zach Thinks Your podcast. I can't really tell y'all how excited I am today to be meeting with Laura Danger, the one, the only. To give you some context of how excited I am about this, my wife, when I was talking to her the other day and saying that Laura said yes to come on, she said, "Oh my God, you've been waiting so long to ask and or have her." And Alyssa doesn't know probably more than 5 of my content creator friend names. So one, I think that is like a contextual thing you guys can appreciate. I'm sure there's one, if you're listening to your husband talk about players, you probably know, if you only know 5 players, you know one that matters to him. Like this is one of the content creators that's made a significant impact in my life. And further context is when I was a new dad and I started out on TikTok back in 2021. I took it really seriously. I was making a video a day. I didn't really grow my platform until I started talking about our child and actually having our child in the videos, which looking back, I feel a lot of shame about. But that was when I started bumping into Laura on TikTok. Not quite sure what, it was probably a weaponized incompetence video or something, but I remember learning from you and Kaylee Cresta back in 2021. And then it was 2022, I think. We must have DM'd back and forth or commented on each other something. And I had asked, hey, what book should I read next? And it was you and Abby Eckel had recommended that I read Fair Play, which has changed the trajectory of my career. It's changed the trajectory of our marriage. I think that there's a lot of guys that don't get through that book because the first couple chapters are pretty tough on guys, and that's why I hold their hand through it. And knowing that both Laura and Abby had recommended it, and were, I know you weren't by any means holding my hand through it, like knowing that I trusted and believed in you guys, like that was I think if Alyssa had recommended it, I don't know if I would have actually read it, but I know that because I really trusted, believed, and was learning so much from you guys, like that got me through it. And then furthermore, you were the one that connected me with Fair Play, and they had me become a Fair Play facilitator, which is now my full-time career. So Laura, you've really impacted the way that I think, the way that I see myself as a husband, as a father, as a feminist, as a warrior for women's rights. And I think some of the really interesting, intricate ways of thinking that you've impacted me is how I see jokes, that are punching down on women, that your articulation of them has significantly changed how I see the world. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It's unbelievable to have you here.
Wow, what an intro. As you're going through that, I totally forgot. I'm like flashing back to 2021. It feels like ages ago. And I remember that you were like always so, I don't know, like I'm sure you speak your mind, not very filtered. And so you were just like talking. I remember you like being in the room while the baby was like learning how to nap. Like those first days, the early days. So interesting. Totally forgot about that. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. It's been really cool being in the same online space and watching. I mean, things have changed culturally so much since 2021. And it's really cool. I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Let's see. So I wanted to start off with, I remember there's a couple, like it might have been around a year ago, I got a message from somebody saying, Zach, like, thank you so much for what you've taught me. I finally decided enough was enough with my relationship. I asked my husband for a divorce, and we're going through that. And it was a thank you note. And I remember having no idea how to be with that emotionally. Like I didn't know how to process that. And you were the first person I came to. And I'm not going to ask you to comment on that one, but I think there's so often that I receive DMs that are often women saying, hey, how do I explain mental load to my partner? And I think it's always interesting seeing what other creators, other coaches, other thought leaders are receiving in their inbox, as well as like what their favorite messages are. And so I know for myself, my favorite message is seeing a guy DM me and say, thank you so much for the language. Like, you've made it palatable. Like, I have a really hard time watching some of those other guy content creators or some of the other women, but you've made it like accessible for me. And I really appreciate it. Like, our marriage is getting better and my wife is seeing changes in me. What is your favorite DM to receive?
I love those too. The proportions of gender of who's following me is definitely like a lot more women. I think it's the same for you.
Yeah.
But when I get men, anyone who messages me and says, yeah, things in my life have changed a lot because of your content, whether or not it's I decided to transition away from this marriage, or we've totally transformed our partnership, or I'm going to carry this information into the next relationship, like whatever that is, feels really good. But anytime someone is like, I felt seen, I felt validated, or I have rethought my relationship to care labor. Those are my big ones.
What do you, for what, I'm sure it's much more rare when you get the messages from the guys, but what do you think is like that epiphany or like that first hurdle that they need to get through or they need to get past, and then like a handful of the chips kind of fall from there?
That's a good question. And I'm really eager to hear your perspective of this. I want to say in my mind, valuing the work as important, or seeing it as something you can contribute to a relationship, is the key. So I think there's this like so many stuck messages that we get about what our worth is and what we're supposed to be doing. And so when that is challenged, as in, hey, we want you at home doing these things, your opinion matters. When we build a life together, your contribution can just be being emotionally present, mentally present. That's a huge step away from the social messaging we get. And I think that needs to happen, but that's also very disorienting. So like, I understand the resistance to it, but what do you think is going on? Like, what is the domino?
I had a conversation with one of my guy clients today, which he's already made it past, I think, the first domino, but like still an earlier domino that I don't think he'd be able to see if he didn't get past the whatever the first stage was. So he's full-time working dad, probably 50, 60 hours a week. And they were talking about implementing fair play and persist, and looking at he was like, when we go to do the cards again, because they tried the fair play cards like a year or two ago, and it didn't go well because neither of them read the book. They just watched the documentary. He said, like, how do we divvy stuff up? I was like, well, what I would do is make sure to put your job, like however many hours the two of you expect you to work every week, put that in there. But also ask yourself, if she were to go back to work, if you were to get a nanny, or if the kids like were being managed, like what responsibilities would then they've been delegated, like the physical ones. And so I think I think his brain broke as I was talking to him. Like I could physically see a change in his face as he was hearing that like something clicked. But I think the first domino is, it's almost like seeing that you're not entitled to the marriage that you originally signed up for, where I think even for myself, like I had this concept, oh, I'm a feminist. Like I love my wife and like I'm here for her. And I feel like I've done a good job being emotionally available for her throughout all of our marriage. What I think we had a hard time with was me being physically available for domestic labor, being mentally available for domestic labor, being emotionally available for domestic labor versus like I'm a great listener. I think I'm a good like coach and like I can be open to hearing her out and letting her vent and stuff. But when she would share things that were important to her around domestic care, I would just chalk it up to, oh, well, you care about that and I don't. And I think the bridge of like, you care about that, therefore, if I care about you, I have at least a heightened level of care for making sure that happens. Which I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like, Oh, I think it was from that movie, The Breakup, when Jennifer Aniston says like, I always want to go to ballet. He's like, why the fuck would I want to go to ballet? And she's like, well, I go to the Cubs games and I don't give a shit about baseball. And I forget if it clicked for him in that moment, but like, I'm wondering if that's like a pretty early domino. I'm sure there's a handful like up front that if you knock down one of those, the rest of them will kind of fall like two or three of the third row of the pins will probably knock down the other five to more. But I feel like that's one of them, is like seeing that caring for your person also like includes caring for things that matter to them, even if you
Mm-hmm.
don't still appreciate them. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a weird, and no, it does not click for him in that moment. No, it doesn't. He, that is really interesting. I feel like that might be the make or break moment too. Like when people have that conversation and it's, I do these things because I love you. And a lot of times the response is like, but those things don't matter, or I'm not asking you to do these things. And there's just there's a total misalignment in what two people think a relationship is. And I know something that I have heard from couples a lot is like, whoever's doing the nagging, whoever is doing the delegating or managing the household is making decisions for everyone, like considering their needs, the kids' needs, the thinking big about all of these things and making a whole bunch of compromises and decisions that are considerate. And then the other person doesn't maybe have as much practice or receives information from one person, from the nag's mouth, and doesn't see that it's already been thought about. They aren't seeing the care and consideration, and it just feels like they're being told what to do. Or it appears to be that person's prerogative, that person's opinion, and they aren't seeing the care and consideration. So it comes off like a battle, and whoever is in the position of delegating, deciding, nagging, um, just feels like the bad guy all the time. So it's like a really big trap. But yeah, if you're not going to acknowledge the care and consideration or the responsibility we have to each other to show up, even if we don't quite get it, you're gonna be in for a lot of strife and struggle.
yeah. Which kind of brings me to the next question, which I know is similarly challenging, and I want to reference. I don't know how much are we allowed to say about your book. I'm sure it's like okay. So if I'm recalling correctly, it is the title is No More Mediocre.
Correct.
Now, the question I'd shared with you before we came on here was if you could summon 1,000 content creators, generally in our niche, to hone in on one message for folks, like what would that message be that kind of creates that domino effect for people? Like if you're just like the social media general of the fair play facilitators and the creators that are all like in and around our space, it occurs to me, and I'm curious how off or how incorrect I might be, that no more mediocre and or like seeing that men are capable of more, they owe more than they're giving often, and or that like I feel like I want to say something about how we deliver that message, but I'm imagining that might be the general message that you would request that the content creators go after.
Yeah. So part of the title, No More Mediocre, is that it's, there's the like fed up, or there's the my marriage ended because of the dishes. And like, it's a bit attention grabbing.
Mm.
And I think that it reminds people of like, there's this no more mediocre men. We should raise the bar. There's these phrases that we think of. And when I say no more mediocre, really all I mean is that we deserve better.
Mm.
And mediocre is that we're settling, and we're settling in many ways in our lives. We're settling in how hard we have to work. We're settling in trying to get all of our needs met within this nuclear family unit when we should really have friends and family and chosen family and neighbors. And my whole thesis is that when we do what we're supposed to do, or we accept whatever norms are as inevitable, or
Mhm.
like we're born with this a penchant to do things this exact way, it holds us back from what really works for us. So I think, yeah, like in the relationship space, when we challenge the idea of who should do what or rethink how we do things, that's having less mediocre lives. That's having better lives. At work, people who challenge the idea of, I mean, anyone who talks about workers' rights or fair wages or the access to housing, those are also, when we have more access to resources, we have more time and energy and emotional space for each other. I think that all of those things are related. So if I could harness the power, it would just be like, how can we imagine a future that is better than what we have?
I feel like you would enjoy talking to Alyssa. So we're looking at moving out of the house we're in right now and saving up and getting a better financial space. And the goal is we want to build a multifamily situation. It's going to look like about, we think, 4 sort of luxury townhouses, but instead of having them be outdoors, be their front like porch areas, have it be indoors so that they're forced to like bump into each other kind of. And then off of that, have a bunch of like 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and or micro apartments that are off in like a connecting building. But similarly, like a bunch of those micro apartments have like kitchenettes where they're kind of forced to come out to a communal, it's almost like a restaurant, but you just grab a plate and it's almost a little bit like college where you show up and they throw food on your plate kind of. Because we're recognizing like right now we're in, I don't know if this is rural Massachusetts, but we have 3 acres and I don't think we've talked to our next door neighbors in person for more than 15 seconds for about 9 months versus the other side. Like we talk to that guy a lot, but like the the distance between us, like we've used a babysitter once. My parents and her parents, they travel a little over an hour to get here for sometimes. And we go over to her parents all the time just because we're like kind of lonely. And so we recognize like raising one kid this way is hard. And it's literally, I think sometimes it's like how long our driveways are and how intrusive it would be to go up someone else's long ass driveway and go say, hi, you want to have a play date? Or like, you want our kids to meet your kids? Cause we know there's more kids on our street, but like it takes a lot of emotional labor to go up a long driveway and people don't do that often. But if you live in like a communal experience where the architecture forces people to be related, maybe that's part of accepting the no more mediocre.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's an energy like I'm never going to be able to afford that. I can't move. We can't afford this house anywhere else at this point. Like we love our house. Um, if we sold it, we would have to go to the suburbs to afford something. Um, and I don't want to. At one point, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, I had like an idea of these milestones I might have hit in my life, and like this myth that there was such thing as a starter home back then.
Hmm.
Um, this is like the house we buy and die in at this point. But I kind of saw myself as like becoming more independent and not needing as many outside resources. And my ideas have just changed so dramatically. Like there really is no replacing the fact that I know all my neighbors. And yeah,
Hmm.
I'm able to walk. One of the moms she can't make it off of work in time to walk her kid home from theater, but I can. So I'm picking up both our kids. Like it's little things like that. The carpools, the um, someone flagging me down and being like, "There's a block party." Like we don't often think of those things as part of our relationships or the way we
Hmm.
do our chores, but it fully is. And I think all of those things, yeah, are very connected because it's like a mindset shift that these little caring acts really, really matter.
Yeah, and that reminds me of, I think it was last year, you and Crystal had an episode where someone said like, I can't afford to leave my husband as much as like I would like to. Like, what do I do? And I remember your response. Like, I was like, wow, that's how the hell are they going to answer this one? But like, you guys kind of came up with like, there's more in your community than you're probably aware of, and trying to find that, plug into it as much as you can, to give yourself space, to give yourself community, to give yourself other forms of other people doing emotional labor when your husband's not showing up for it. And I think that episode sticks in my mind a fair amount when I think about the lack of community that we experience over here, and that we recognize that we have like a yearning for. That on some level, like I've tried starting conversations with some of our neighbors about like, hey, like, let me grab your number, maybe we can trade off date nights, and like your kid can come over. And then I am terrible. I haven't followed through on any of them. And there's all those like little bids for connection that either are missed, or they make it for you and it's just not a good time. And like, when you keep missing each other, then I feel like a lot of times both parties give up.
Yeah, that is a message that we get a lot. And that's actually, like, if I had to have a hot take, I think that a lot of times online, like, conversations come up and it's like, oh, that guy treats you terribly, you need to leave. Or if you have if you're dealing with weaponized incompetence, break up with him, move out. And it is, I think, often dismissive of real conditions. And I do think, like, that's why cost of living and available resources and things like that, like, it is really hard for a single parent to exist and find daycare that they can rely on and work a job and pay for everything. So for a lot of people, they say, like, I will emotionally shut down at home if it means material safety for me and for my kids. And so how do you survive that? You make other connections, you find joy in different ways, you accept the circumstances, and you cope, or you set different boundaries. So it is like, yes, cool, leave if you can, awesome. I'm not going to dissuade anyone. Like, a lot of times that is a great answer. Sometimes you're going to get people who are going to go to you, and it's like, I have a lack of skills or resources, I just need some help. And sometimes it's, I'm with an unwilling partner, I need to figure out how to deal with this. There's just no cut and dry answer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like all the time women come to me asking, how do I explain this to my husband? And I always have to give the disclaimer before I answer. My answer is going to require you to do emotional labor that you're probably already doing, and we're going to just reroute the energy that you're already putting into this. And so I don't make videos about that anymore, because it's always filled with, fuck you, Zach, like, we're already doing the emotional labor, we don't want to do more. I'm like, I know, I'm just answering the question that all of you are asking me individually, which kind of brings me to one of the other questions I wanted to discuss with you. So you occurred to me as like, if anyone is an expert on weaponized incompetence, all the many stories, all the many flavors of it out there, you occurred to me as probably the widest breadth of knowledge around that. One of the things that I was watching, as I scroll through and see what I'm tagged in, I bookmark the things I think I can stitch. And one of them was, it was a Netflix post from Love is Blind. And the guy, he asked 9 questions in a matter of like probably 90 seconds or something about how to make pasta. He started off with like, oh, I don't see the pasta, where is it? She's like, oh, I haven't got it out yet. And then he's like, he looks in the fridge, and then she's like, no, silly, it's in the cabinet. And then he's like, okay, how much water should I boil? What temperature should I put it at? Should I fill up the whole thing? And I thought, like, I don't know if this is a first date. Like, I don't know the full context of the situation. If this is a 9-year marriage, for sure, probably weaponized incompetence. Like, he knows what he's doing. On a first date, I don't know if it is. And I guess he had said, like, at some point she had said, like, I thought you said you cooked. He's like, yeah, I'm just trying to not like get it wrong, and I want you to get mad at me. And I remember seeing one of the first comments that I'm sure Instagram's like, yeah, Zach will appreciate this one, was like, this, folks, is weaponized incompetence. And I don't know that that is. I'm pro labeling weaponized incompetence when I see it in the wild. I don't think this is an example. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about the word is it calls out something that has been invisible for a long time. And now that I think there's there's an SNL skit about it like 9 months ago or something. So like it's in the, it's in, I'm going to use this word long. It's in the lexicon of our culture, but I think we need more language instead of going to that. And I'm going to liken it to, weaponized incompetence to me occurs to me as like, specifically manipulative. Like I'm going to purposefully try showing my partner that I don't know how to do something so they will stop asking me for it, which is occurs to me as very purposeful. And I'm going to liken it to the murder sentencing that we have in our country. So I'm not fully informed on everything, but there's like murder 1, murder 2, murder 3. There's like involuntary manslaughter, and there's a lot of other different things. So my understanding is murder 1's like the worst. I think that's right. First degree murder, where it's like you planned it, you know what you were doing, you ended someone's life, and like this was all planned. That occurs to me as weaponized incompetence. And what I think is happening is that there's a lot of involuntary manslaughter that's getting labeled as murder 1. And so I think in that example, if it was a first date, which I'm not sure if it was, when he was saying like, I don't want to get you mad, it occurs to me that maybe he was in a previous relationship where he would get a ton of shit for doing things minutely wrong. And so he was protecting himself against that, or maybe it occurred to me he actually didn't know how to cook pasta and had not done it for a long time. And either it looked like he was in his late 20s. I was like, damn, I definitely knew how to do that when I was 18. So it's a little concerning, but I didn't feel like I needed to give him shit today for that. So one of the words I've been trying to use where appropriate is negligent selfishness, which I think is a much more descriptive word for, I'm going to argue, maybe like 60% of the things that get labeled weaponized incompetence. And I'm curious for you, how do you feel about that language? And I think I had another two word phrase that I was using, but do you feel like there's worthwhile nuance to weaponized incompetence, and or is there language that you use that I should consider adopting?
Yeah, but I think negligence is like, I do feel like a lot of what happens is that. And yeah, I write about this in my book, which I will let you know when I have pre-orders on it. But it's really tricky because you don't want to, it would be cruel to say to someone who genuinely doesn't know how to do something to like accuse them of targeting you or attacking you if they aren't capable of doing something. What matters is the communication and the good faith effort.
Hmm.
So if you're being negligent or you're pushing off responsibility for someone to teach you, or if you're choosing ignorance, you know that you don't know how to do something and you aren't taking initiative, there are all of these pieces. And where I find it to be tricky is what you're talking about, which is, have you grown up not thinking this was your responsibility?
Hmm.
Or have you grown up with a parent or in a society that treats you, caters to you to educate you? And I do think we all have personal responsibility to unlearn the things that we've learned unintentionally. And that's where I can understand a lot of people that call it outright, it's abuse. They want to like shout that. And I would also offer a little bit of nuance there. It's like there's such thing as abusive behavior that needs to be addressed, or recurring harm. And from everyone I've talked to, therapists, domestic violence experts, and things like that, it is not as cut and dry. There's no if it's a recurring pattern, if it's intentionally manipulative, if it's humiliating, there are these things, power and control. When that's there, most people agree it is abuse. But yeah, you really have to think critically about it. And you can't make somebody take responsibility. So when you're the person on the receiving end, I think that's what's really hard about it is you have to say, okay, where's my line? At what point is this harm? It doesn't matter if it's intentional or not. It's harming me and it needs to change. So here's my limit. And that's where I try to come to it. Is like the harm exists. The harm exists. And if it isn't changing, then yeah, it's negligent. It is a weapon, even if you are wielding it irresponsibly and it's causing harm. So yes, 100% I feel like there is nuance to be had there. But it's harm.
Yeah.
It's harm no matter what.
Yeah, it was interesting in that video because at some point she says, you know what, you just sit down. Like we can keep talking. Like I got this, because that is definitely a moment where it's like, all right, she's clearly managing the mental load, and it's literally easier for her to turn her brain off and just turn the water on and do it herself than it is for her to answer minute questions that like I don't know how much water to put it, just all the way. Like I don't know how much temperature, just all the way. Like when I think about pasta, like I don't think that hard. Versus answering his questions more harder than thinking like the muscle memory of it. Which I remember a video. I think you did a great breakdown of it. I think it's I can see the guy's face. He had long hair. His wife asked him to do the potatoes, and he goes in and puts like the dishwashing soap, and then it's like that was so clearly one because then he makes that face of like I just got away with this, and that was like so. I can't remember the name of the family, but I'm sure you know who they are. But like that was like a really good example of weaponized incompetence that I think is like if I ever need to define it, like that's probably my favorite video to describe of like what was disappointing about the video too is knowing his wife was a part of making the video. I'm like, what was going on in the conversation? I think you've done a handful of videos where you're like, as they were shooting this, like, what was the conversation that they were having? Like, hey, you know how you do that thing sometimes where you're an asshole and you manipulate me? Let's make a video about that. That would be funny.
Right.
And I think that right there, like you breaking down the conversation that has to happen to make the video that both of them are in on, that is like the dimension of content creation that I feel like you've really opened my brain up to. I love when you like call out like the underlying creation of what's going on, and which similar reminds me too. I was sad for the shit you received last year, like just over a year ago when you did the breakdown of the lady. It's like stressed out, and I do this, and then I can't do this because this is broken, and can't do that because this is not fixed. And you did a breakdown of that one, and then the dadvocate just like unloaded on you, and then like you showed all the receipts for how like she screwed with you on that one. That was so satisfying when you broke down all the receipts of it. But like you occur to me as a super responsible creator that like you know that there are tough messages that you're delivering when you're stitching something, and at the same time like you point out like this is the context that they gave us. There's nothing missing about like they put a video out later, which you can see that I even thought about this for 2 days while I was considering posting it. And I think you've also helped me evolve maybe like the integrity about how I see the impact that I now have with like over 4 platforms of like just over 1 million followers. And see, not to get corny Spider-Man-y, but like with great power comes, with a large following comes great responsibility. I think you've been a great example of that.
It's really tricky, I think. And I think I've gotten better at this over the years. It's really tricky to talk about a concept without it coming off like criticizing the person. And so, I try to, like, for example, the video you're talking about is like a woman basically like printer jamming. She's in the house and she's like, I see this, and then I have to go to this. And then she's like talking about how I do it all the time. And it's, I think, an ADHD thing, but also an overwhelmed brain thing. So it's like I go to the kitchen and there's no dishes, so I can't cook dinner. And it's just like the domino effect that happens. And so many people relate to that experience. And it is uncomfortable to see it normalized online. And I do think we should just all be very critical of what we're consuming, because if we don't, then we're going to catch ourselves going, oh God, everyone is dealing with this. Like everyone's husband puts soap on the potatoes and tries to get out of doing things around the house. Something like, I'm going to veer off for 1 second.
Yeah, please.
Something that I have thought a lot about that exact situation is like, why would you participate in a trend or make a joke out of him skirting responsibilities or putting more work on you? And my theory is that we think that work is really hard, like paid work. It's so hard. He did his due. He like provides for this family. I think they have a lot of kids, that particular family. But like, we have nice things. He takes good care of us. He never yells at me. He is like, he listens to me when I need to vent. So if he doesn't want to participate in this stuff, like, I just think it's silly. I get it. And it's like, there are so many excuses and justifications for it, and we just don't see it as a problem. That's like the biggest thing is like, they post it because they really don't think it's a big deal. But when you dig into it more, when you think, like, I think back to, did you ever watch TGIF or like any of those sitcoms?
No, I don't think I watched that one. I watched a lot of Seinfeld, Simpsons, Two and a Half Men. Everyone Loves Raymond.
Okay, well, Raymond is a good one.
Yeah.
Like, or I mean, I watched a lot of those shows. Like, the dad goes out and works really hard, and he's like browbeaten. King of Queens is this way, big time. Like, the work
like the
is
one
so
where he's
hard.
asking for where the scissors are, and then like it's funny that she's like verbally kicking his ass over the fact of where the scissors are, and it's like the writing of it, the placed audience laughter is on her over the fact that like it's a ridiculous thing that she's giving him shit for this.
Right.
And it's also silly how he goes about, and he's like a little bit shameful as he goes and finds the scissors. Like he's this,
he's like a baby, like a little silly boy. And it's like, it's like, oh, it's so hard. Everything is so hard. The bosses are hard on you. You come home and the wife is hard on you. And like, it's just really hard. And like, that is probably very true. And the blame needs to be on the boss. The blame needs to be on the conditions of how hard we have to work. Like, we are tired. We are having a hard time showing up for each other. You want to get out of doing the dishes because you're tired. So is she, though. And that's where it's like, instead of pushing it off on each other, or like pointing fingers at which one of you has worked harder or needs more sympathy, like we kind of all do. So what can we do together?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm not that funny, but I wish I were. I wish I were better at writing jokes that punch up. And I think I don't know if it was you or someone else was talking a lot about like the dynamics of the joke. I can see Matt Rife made around the domestic abuse. And it's like, that was a punching down joke at the expense of the waitress. How do we go about making jokes that punch up? And one that comes to mind, I get tagged in all the time because it always resurfaces. He was recently on SNL. I can see his face, Nate Growetz or something. He was like, our kid just goes to a new school, and the school calls me and says, "Hey, what bus number is?" And he's like, "You thought I would have this information? You called the dad. You said, I see the mom's number and the dad's number. I'm going to call the dad. He definitely has this." Right. Like, I wish I knew how to write better jokes that punch up at the problem with the systems rather than punching back at the misogynist view that is the policing that keeps us like stuck in this state.
Claire Brown is fantastic at that. She's on Threads. She wrote a book, and she does the like, if we treated dads the way we treat moms. She's fantastic. There's also this podcast called the Dumb Dads Podcast.
Yep.
I really like them. And something that they do jokes that punch back at the systems, but they also just do like family comedy that completely veers away from that sort of thing, where it's just like they talk about how chaotic it is when your kids come home from school and just like throw stuff everywhere, or like the mistake you make when you tell a kid what you're going to do 5 days ahead, and then every single day up until then they bug you about it, or like basic relationship stuff that isn't man does this, woman does this. It's just like they talk about human experiences as active partners and totally
Mm.
normalize it. And they're I think contributing to the culture in a way that's just like, I'm a parent, I'm a partner. There's no category except for this is my relationship to these people right now. And I think that that's really cool and subtle.
I remember being really jealous of them. I think it was 2 years ago when they did a skit with Kristen Bell, and I was like, I'm cool. I think it was 2021, so I just started, so now I can't be jealous anymore. But yeah, that's a good point, because I think which brings me to another side note. I'm enjoying this new route we've headed down. I've noticed, so like, just for shits and giggles, like I have my recovering man child hat with me very often. When I think of the Dumb Dad Pod, there's recovering man child. There's the guy that talks about screen time, dads who try. I think there's a handful of other ones. It's like, I feel like a lot of the guys that are doing good work on the internet around, sometimes subtly, sometimes like overtly, like trying to elevate how men are seen and how dads roles are elevated. We often have this self-deprecating persona to us, and versus like there's best dad CEO, and I'm sure you remember him. He sucks. um
Yeah.
and it's interesting thinking about like why we're choosing self-deprecating language in our titles. There's like one or two other ones that I'm thinking of that have like a similar thing, where they're not too braggy. They're not like. I'm curious. Do you have any insight as to why you think? I haven't even put this on myself, but like, what? Why? I lied there. I use recovering man child because I think that punching at myself first, saying this is where I'm screwing up, this is where I'm messing up, this is where I'm trying to get better, gives more men permission to lean in. Versus, if I were to say like if I were saying like mental load expert or mental load king, or I don't know, something absurd, like there'd be a lot less. That would be very ego driven, and I'd probably feel great about it. I'd probably feel disgusting inside, but I'm self-aware enough to know that is actual disgusting. But I think that's probably why we do that. Do you think those other creators probably do similar things? Is like they want other guys to be able to lean in, and so they'll call themselves dumb dads?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. What is really cool is I think you and the people that you're talking about, it's like squashing this hierarchy and squashing the idea that you need to be the best at something. And even just that is
Mm.
like kind of radical and profound, to just be like, I don't know, man, I'm figuring it out. And I try to take the same approach too. Like, I'm coming to you as someone who is learning this and who exists in the same context. And I don't like anyone who's in my personal life would say, like, I don't have everything figured out. I'm actively deconstructing it. I'm
Mm.
actively working on it. And I think you do the same thing, which is what makes you approachable.
Mm.
Is like, I'm going to hold your hand. You're going to be holding my hand right back. We
Mm.
are doing this together. This is not our fault that we've inherited these norms. However, we have personal responsibility. This is what that kind of looks like. I don't have it nailed. That's just so much more approachable than, yeah, the second I hear these coaches online who are like, here's 3 things you can do as an expert in relationships. I'm like, I would love to hear from your friends. Like, I just want to hear the people in your life, how they
Mm,
feel about that. And there's nothing, I don't find anything welcoming to that. Like, to be humble is to be human. And I think the work that we do is such human work.
mm. Yeah, I think there have been a lot of moments where I've been almost scared to approach you because I think it was I had reached out about something last year and like I'm really on deadline. I can't do 30 minutes. But I remember one video that I think for a long time I'd sort of learned from you as like I know I called you a big sister in a video. It was maybe 2 years ago now, but I remember I had it was so much. One of my favorite videos actually from you, I think you had talked about toothpaste and how um,
Yeah.
the labels on the toothpaste you kept leaving out or something, and so your kids were accidentally using the adult one, which is they swallow and it's like not good for them, and your husband had like called that out, and it was the first time I'd seen you were pointing out like you actually added mental load for your husband or like there was impact there for him. And yeah, I think when we can call ourselves out and where we screw up, like I don't know that that changed that much about how I saw you, but I think it really helped me continue to like see you as like someone that I consistently wanted to listen to, and consistently felt really good about taking advice from, because I know that you were self-aware enough and willing to share where you weren't perfect as well.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate hearing that. I mean, we just had a conversation the other day because yeah, my husband, I don't think he has ADHD. I do. I'm messy. I work from home and I dilly dally. Like, I drive him crazy because I take my time. I get distracted. I forget what I'm doing all the time. And so, which also makes, when I have to manage more of the mental load, makes me really frustrated. But he was getting really anxious because I would be almost late in his mind, almost late getting the kids out the door. And we had to have a conversation and I had to be like, okay, I you're stressing out. I'm stressing you out. Whatever I'm doing, we're always on time. Like, I've been living with this thing with me myself a long time. I've got a plan. I know it doesn't make sense to you. Um so we had to set a deadline and be like, okay, we're downstairs by 7:40. And if I am it's not 7:40 and I'm not downstairs, feel free to yell up at me.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I feel a little criticized when it's 7:35 and you're like, you guys come in. So we had to have a
Mm.
really frank conversation because my behavior was impacting him and his behavior was impacting me. And we were like the opposite sees nag paradox, or I was like, stop yelling at me. Like, he's not yelling at me, but he's like, I'm worried.
Mm.
I feel nervous. We're going to be late. So yeah, it is. It's like an ongoing conversation. And I'm fully on the other end of it a lot. So that I've tried to be more frank and open about that, I think, recently online, because it's like, again, it's a human experience. Like, I forget the trash too. I don't want to do the dishes.
What do you think is the hardest part about being content creator? Because I know that you're a coach as well, and like this is your full time thing. Like, what do you think is the hardest part about being a personality that people look to and either love or hate, or hopefully, hopefully as I've got one of my clients back in January. He said, Zach, like I hated your face for a good 6 months. And then one day you made a video and I had just done the exact thing that you just described in the video. And I was like, I can't be mad at you anymore. I'm so mad that I can't be mad at you anymore. What,
Mm-hmm.
um, what do you think is one of the hardest parts about having the significant following that you have and speaking up on these issues?
I want to say a lot of it is difficult. One of the things that I have a hard time with is, yeah, feeling like I want to be doing this work with other people. And I love workshops. I love panels. I love talking. And like, if I've been invited to speak, I'm fine with that. I do like that. But I really just want to be, and you as an educator, I'm sure you get the same thing, is like,
Mm,
I want to be in a circle talking to people about this and working through these things as a group. And I don't like the experience of being pedestalized, or I've heard the same thing, like you're saying, like, I have, I, I, I think especially a year or two ago came off as unapproachable, because it's like, especially from men, because they think they're going to be criticized or I'm going to be judgmental, because I have strong opinions online.
Mm.
And I have tried to change my tune and I've tried to communicate. So it's hard to have my context flattened and people to project themselves into what I'm saying and to not have their story. I don't know who's watching at any given moment or how they're going to receive it. And also, like, I want to come off as a collaborator and I want to do more stuff with people. And so I'm trying to right now, like, professionally translate to being in front of people face to face so that we can really, so I know the context, so I can see their faces, so they can see mine. And that disarming of like, this is messy work. Let's do it.
What is the main way that you operate as like this being your full-time job? Is it like one-on-one clients or groups?
Some one-on-one clients. Right now, my priority has been getting this book out, and that will be happening soon. I just did the like final round of edits, which is so exciting. And from there, I have some speaking engagements lined up for 2025. I do some like corporate panels and workshops. I've done some curriculum development. So basically taking someone's concept and their learning goals, and then using my expertise and experience to create something, if it's a small group workshop or, kind of tailoring it to what somebody needs, organizations, corporate stuff. Yeah. And I would like to do more of that.
Another question, both from someone that's trying to do more corporate things, which I have a time block after this set up to work on my workshop, where someone contacted me of their ERG was putting their budget together, and they're like, Zach, I think I'd like to have you guys come talk to our group. One of the people that are looking to have you come speak to them in a corporate organization, my first thought is like, the dollar often comes first. So you have to almost come up with a pitch that creates ROI in there. What are some of the things that you're helping organizations look at and are like, I'm sure the people that hire you have probably seen you before, and I'm imagining part of when they pitch it to their boss or to the head of HR, to the CEO, like they're probably using some other language to describe why they love you and are the value that you're going to bring. What is typically the angle or the approach of like how your speaking is going to benefit their group?
If you want to know what's hard, it's that. I also understand, like, I'm a little bit more anti-establishment than some other people. And I know that sometimes I worry that when I'm pitching people, they go to my social media and in my stories, I'm like ranting or swearing a bunch or just like saying things that corporate
Sticking
wouldn't
up for
love.
human rights.
Right. So I know that I'm not as marketable as some other people, and that's okay, because I'm going to bring that energy to my workshops.
Yeah.
So even when I'm working with some of like the biggest name companies out there, I'm going to their family groups and I'm talking to them about the challenges of when your boss forces you back into the workplace 5 days a week. So that's a problem. And bosses don't love that. Corporate doesn't love that. So I have to be honest. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, I have to be honest about who I am and what I'm going to offer. That is really tricky. I don't know if that answers your question.
So like maybe one of the gigs that you've done in the last 6 or 12 months, like what do you think the conversation was between maybe the person that hired you or like wanted you to get hired and the person and the decision maker they had to convince? Like they said, Laura's going to come in and she's going to what?
I would say, my focus is on finding balance in our household so that we can show up more authentically and feel more secure and aligned and to have more, sometimes depending on who it is, I'll say to have more mental space. I've had other people pitch me, because that's helpful to have someone else pitch me. But I mean, there is a return on investment. Retaining employees is really important. There's a lot of data that shows that employees who feel supported or have their needs met are happier. And also, a lot of these companies who will bring in someone like you or I want it to be clear to their employees that they are invested in being a part of their lives. And so when the language is that we want your staff to feel supported through life transitions, which is a human experience, then you show up better at work, you show up better at home, everybody's happier. You don't have to spend all that money hiring someone new. So there's data, there's stuff out there.
Yeah. I feel like the way
Corporate
I've been
speak.
thinking about it more recently is like, so I mean, I used to be in sales. I feel like I'm still very much in sales as I'm now a full-time coach. One of the things I was thinking is if you want your top salesperson to continue crushing it in making their numbers and your company's numbers, do you want them going through a divorce? Probably not. You probably don't want them like feeling like they're not showing up as the way that they want to be in their home. And so if you want them to feel like they're killing it at home so that they can keep killing it at work, like they need to understand invisible labor and mental and emotional labor. And even being able to understand that, like being able to talk with the clients that they're landing for your company, like they're going to be more able to relate to people in their human experience.
Yeah, you've worked with Rose Hackman. And I think one of the things that's so interesting about her book, Emotional Labor, is she points out the corporate aspect of that. Like, we often say that men don't have as much empathy or practice with empathy. However, the second you put a salesperson who's a man in front of a client, they suddenly know how to look up their favorite food, their hobbies, research all of the things to connect with them. They know how to pick a good time to call. They know how to do the emotional labor of getting what they need out of a client and making them feel like there's all of these skills that go with connecting with clients that
Yeah, they know to take the mental load off the potential client and say, hey, here's a good time that works for me. Here's 3 other times, rather than asking the open-ended question of like, when's a good time for you?
Right.
I don't think
So
of all the things I've heard Rose say, I don't think I've actually heard that one, but that is magic in my ears right now.
it's in the intro.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a statistic about like men and women. If you pay a man $1 to be empathetic, he's really good at being empathetic.
I remember that now.
There's
Yeah.
a study about that. Women are better. Women show improvement in empathy too if they have a reward at the end. But there's a social reward is just as good or about as good as $1. Fascinating study.
The 2 biggest books that I think have empowered me as a coach have been recommendations from you: Fair Play and Emotional Labor. Laura, what's your
They're
next one?
great.
What's the now?
The next one's
I
going
know
to be
your book.
mine.
Yeah, it's going to be yours. For the ones that are on the, how long do we have to wait to get yours?
Oh, I will tell you as soon as I know. It's 2025 though. So,
Okay.
and soon. So that's soon enough. What is the next one that's
Yeah, in the 3 months minimum that I have to wait to see your book, what's the next one? And will there be an audiobook for yours?
Oh yeah.
And
Yes.
will it be you speaking it or someone else?
I'm pretty sure it's me. I'm pretty sure it's me.
I
Yes.
I beg of you it to be you. I one strange skill that I think I own after 120 audiobooks I've consumed in 10 years. I know pretty quickly whether it's the author or if it's somebody
Oh
else. Like if
yeah.
you just put me in the middle of the book and it's like the authenticity, it's like the delivery of the words in the context that they were clearly meant. There's a little bit of space in between the context that it was meant for and that's actually being delivered, and I can hear it. Now,
Okay.
eventually I can usually trick myself down the road that like I get their voice, but like I can tell like a voice actor versus like the author.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the plan so far. I don't know when. But yeah, I can't think of like what is my number 3?
I can tell you a couple
Yeah, how about
that,
you?
I mean, looking at all the ones on the bookshelf. I've really enjoyed recently, I haven't finished it yet, but Entitled by Kate Mann. She also wrote Down Girl.
I've
That was
heard
really
great
good.
things.
Down
I
Girl
haven't.
was, I DM'd her. I was like, I think I'm too dumb for your book, man. Like, help. And she's like, yeah, that was part of my like thesis or something. And she was like, that helped me get tenured, I think it was. I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, so I'm not dumb. That's just really, it's really
Mm-hmm.
up there. But Entitled was like made for my learning skill. For the Love of Men by Liz Plank, I really
Oh, yeah.
appreciated that. An older one was Cinderella Ate My Daughter.
I
That
love
was
that
good.
one.
I've been struggling to, I know you've talked about this other one, but I've struggled to get through it, is Braiding Sweetgrass.
Oh, yeah. That
I'm
one,
struggling through it.
it absolutely changed my life forever. That was a life-altering book for me. Um, if you need an intro, if you can't get through that,
Mm-hmm.
try Becoming Kin by Patty Crawwack. I will send you a message with it.
Okay.
Becoming Kin, Patty Crawwack. It is basically there's so much indigenous knowledge about what it means to care for one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so like none of the concepts that you and I talk about are new. We aren't maybe talking about it the way we do is
Yeah.
contributing to something revolutionary, but it's all rooted in old knowledge. We're just repurposing and giving our own perspective and all of that. So I love hearing other people. And braiding sweetgrass like truly is it's very scientific, it's very slow.
Yeah.
um and like I wrote about a lot of metaphors in my book and it got cut every time. They were just like, Laura, stop. Like, kindly, I love you, but not everybody wants to hear about a root system when it comes to running a household. So I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, fine. I'll keep that to social media. I'll make it into a TikTok. I get it. So yeah, understood. A lot of people can't get through it.
Interesting. So this is good prep for me as I'm working on my proposal now. Is they're not going to like my metaphors, but they imagine they like storytelling though, right?
Oh yeah. And they might like your metaphors. They might not be as like far out as mine. I don't know. They
I think
probably will.
my favorite metaphor, which I don't know if it's my favorite anymore, but I think one of the ones that works well, at least for people embracing fair play, is when you are. I think a lot of people know budgeting is great for their family. Do they budget? No, unless they have a big ticket item that they want to buy. You have a house, you're going to start budgeting. You want to get a car, you're going to start budgeting. You want to, I don't know, go for a vacation, you're probably pretty good at budgeting. I think that unicorn space is the big ticket item in fair plays budgeting. Is that historically we're if we can't afford like basic things, then we start budgeting because we can't, we're drowning. And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from fair play, is like, I feel incomplete, like I'm worked out, that's why I need fair play. And I think what helps a lot of men see it is, all the time I remember for a lot of our marriage, I was like, listen, like, don't go take an hour, go take a day for yourself, like go do that thing that you love, I will hold shit down. And that was something that I was very good at being kind about and really wanting Alyssa to have. But like having her, yeah, I mean, there were probably moments where she felt like she was drowning, and
Mm-hmm.
I, I'm struggling to say it out loud because it sounds terrible. I think there were moments when she might have expressed she was drowning, and I wasn't responding to it because it wasn't sexy enough. Maybe like giving her 6 hours to go do her thing. That's sexy. That's exciting. That's probably your unicorn space, and I can get on board with that. But like hearing that like the dishes and all the stuff is piling up, like I hate budgeting. Like, why should I have to budget? But if we're budgeting for something cool, I can get behind that. I think that might be a metaphor that helps people embrace fair play, is like knowing that part of the purpose is unicorn space.
Yeah. Yeah. Setting a goal. some kind of outcome. Again, as a teacher, I think that's why so many teachers gravitate toward this framework of like
Mm.
identifying an outcome, figuring out the steps to get there. Like all of that is very understandable. And I think that like teacher brain latches on to the actual, like, we've studied what that looks like on a page.
Yeah,
Um,
we've also lived through the before. I think emotional labor, understanding mental load, understanding is so much easier as a teacher because you are doing so much of that for your students, and
yeah.
there's like managing the classroom physically, doing the domestic labor of the classroom, picking up the pencils, sharpening them, getting paper out. I remember this book, Teach Like a Champion, said you should spend the first like 10, at least 10, 15 minutes on your first day. If you have binders in the classroom, like handing out the binders and practicing putting them away, which is super like MSC language, which again, didn't have that language back then. But I was like, this feels really stupid, but also smart. I'm going to give this a shot. And like, again, I felt like shit doing it, but there were moments when I had my students marching up and down the halls because they wouldn't shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
Goddamn eighth graders. I love them. But like we would go up and down the halls and be like, we need to be able to do this silently because like it takes us forever to get from the cafeteria to our room every day, which it was like drilling MSC sort of. Um, and I think that's why it was so much easier to pick up fair play and understand it and teach it because we lived it as teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Everything's got its purpose.
Laura, it has been an absolute delight having you today. I'm so excited for your book. I hope I'm on your launch committee or whatever you want to call it, of creators and people that you send your book out to and ask to do lives and stuff with. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to. We'll do this again. Either you come, I know you're coming on ours whenever we can get our act together, our podcast, but I'd love to find a million ways to collaborate. It's been fun.
I'll probably put what link am I going to put in the show notes for people to be in touch with you?
My Instagram is probably the best. It's yeah, at that darn chat. That's the best. Or Time to Lean podcast is the other one.
Okay. I'll put that in there. Again, I mean, you guys have heard me chat with her for the next hour, but like for the past hour, but Laura's been a significant impact in my content creation life, in my understanding fair play and understanding domestic labor and the value it is in the home. And she's a fucking warrior for the injustices of the world, which I often do not have the courage to do because I often do put the business first and don't talk about voting and don't talk about the Middle East and don't talk about those things. And you have the courage to do that. And I certainly stray away from that. At the same time, I've taken advice from you in the DMs trying to learn about those things. And I appreciate what you're doing in the world.
Well, thank you so much. It means a lot, and it's really cool to see you keep on taking your angle and spreading the word. Love to see it.
Thanks, Laura.